Welcome to the Call to Action podcast with Nicole Magic, where conscious awakened leaders listen and action takers are rewarded. Join us for the insightful wisdom of today's special guest with an irresistible offer. Hey, everybody, it's Nicole Magic here with the Call to Action podcast, where we have a very special guest here today. And I'm going to let Michelle tell you a little bit about what she does, but she is also the host of the top-ranked podcast, The Resilient Entrepreneur. So little trickle on what it is that she does. This podcast is less than 10 minutes, and it's a handful of questions. So I'm just going to dive right on in with question number one. Michelle, in a few sentences, tell us who you are and what you do.
Yeah, so that's a big question. Everyone always asks that. And I'm like, how much time you got? But in the sense of we don't have a lot of time here, I will dive in. So on the professional end of things, I'm a business coach, and I focus mainly on high achieving, leaders, executives, entrepreneurs. And my sweet spot is, believe it or not, right between personal and business, because I think you can't take personal out of business. So I help them to optimize their strategic business practices while enhancing their personal development, right? So they can have the whole package, which is always a very good thing to have. Other than that, I'm a speaker with over 20 years of experience. And like you did an excellent job plugging me, my friend. So thank you. The host of The Resilient Entrepreneur. And then on the personal side, I'm a mom of two extremely resilient little boys who are 6 and 9, and married to my best friend. And I, love all things nature. I'm a singer, I just love to find the joy in life wherever I can, especially nowadays, because it's stressful.
Absolutely. It's so nice to have a diverse background, and you can relate to so many different people that way. So that brings us to question number 2. Michelle, what wisdom would you like to share with this audience here?
Yeah, and I was telling you earlier, I always get a question like this. I always look to like how many times I've said the same message to clients or heard the same kind of lesson from podcast guests. And, the first thing is I'm always encouraging people, and myself included. I don't want people to think that I'm not saying these same things to myself on the daily, is to focus on what you can control and remember that you have a choice in that. Especially nowadays with the pandemic. And, I've walked with many a leader and owner and executive through the last crazy couple of years. And if I had $1 for every time I had to say, focus on what you can control and release the other stuff. And the only other thing, if you are not in control, that you can control is your mindset about it. So, and alongside that, I always love to tell people, don't confuse a speed bump for a roadblock, because when adversity is coming at you time and time again, and you feel like, seriously, universe, you're going to throw another friggin' thing at me. Like, you have to remember that, number one, it's a speed bump. You're going to go over it, and you're going to learn more, and you're going to keep going. But also, if you choose to make it a roadblock, that's kind of on you. So don't get stuck there and don't live there. You can feel all of that adversity. You can feel all the crappy emotions that come with it, but don't choose to live there and let it be, a roadblock. So those two things all around choosing, and not letting it get you stuck and learning from it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's what was coming to my mind is how our fears, they can create this illusion like a shadow.
Yes.
A shadow can look so huge, but it's really not. It's
great
just
point.
Not even, there's nothing there. So
yeah. Great point.
So question number 3, what obstacle became your greatest opportunity?
Oh, goodness. Again, like when we were talking before, like I have about 1 million, I feel like, because I'm always looking at everything like, it has to either move you forward or, then what was it worth, right? What was the adversity worth? So for me, the one I'm always, my go-to is that I built the business that I have now alongside both of my children who are medically and mentally kind of complex kids, right? So I built this business in between hospital visits and dealing with everything from, heart issues to seizures, to sensory processing issues, to aspirating into their lungs to, so many things that I don't think the majority of people have dealt with. I'm always joking that like there isn't a hospital, and I'm over here in Massachusetts that I don't know where the cafeteria is because we've been in and out of so many of them. But, in terms of kind of how it was my opportunity, I have a podcast, like you said, The Resilient Entrepreneur. I've been through so much and my family has been through so much. I like to joke when the pandemic hit, we were all kind of like, another fucking thing, like, because we had just gone through it. And when you go through it, I'm a big believer that you do build resilience muscles and it makes you stronger. So I learned to be extremely efficient in my business. I get asked a lot, like, well, if you were dealing with all that, how did you move it forward? And I said, because I didn't do anything for the sake unless it moved me forward. There's no time to bullshit and fuck around, to be blunt. Like, I was very, very efficient, and I learned to operationalize things and make them work to my advantage. But then on the flip side of that, over the years, I've also learned, because things have been very intense at times, that if I do not recharge, if I do not actively seek out joy, in addition to professional and personal adversities, that I will burn out pretty damn quickly. So, that's my biggest obstacle is, getting them through it and getting our family through it in a partnership with my husband, who is my greatest ally with all of this too.
That's great to have a great foundation like that too, and that
Yeah.
solid connection. I felt while you were saying that is, we go through all these adversities, and I went through mine with mercury poisoning and near death from that. And what I'm consciously aware of is that when you're going through these traumatic things, it actually forces you to stay in the present, which
Yes,
is
it does.
why you get through it.
Yes. Yeah, because, like I think there were times, and don't get me wrong, there's a lot of times when I was like focusing on the like what if situations. I think we all do that as humans.
Right.
But when things are coming at you so fast and furious and you're just straight up in survival mode, you're right. Like, you have to be present with what is there to get through the day. But then after the fact, you need to process it. I'm always like joking around like, oh, you got to process your shit, because if you don't, it comes back, right? It comes back and it shows up in your business. It shows up in your relationships. And, I do work with a lot of folks, especially leaders. Leaders nowadays are walking through professional and personal adversity on multiple levels, right? So if you're doing that and not processing it, just holding it all in, it's going to seep out somewhere, and it's going to damage life in a lot of different categories.
Absolutely. Words of wisdom right there.
Thank you. Thanks. Glad it helps.
It does. What is your favorite mindfulness practice or technique?
Yeah, so I am, and again, like, this is something I never thought I would say like in a million years. I'm a big meditator, and I went kicking and screaming to meditation because I was like, I can't sit still for that long. What are you people on crack? But my coach was basically like, Michelle, it's time. So I started with like a 30-day challenge, and I was amazed. I was absolutely floored by, the end of that 30 days, how much calmer my nervous system was, how much I could actually hear myself think. So I'm now at the point where if I go maybe a day or two at the most without meditating, like, I feel it. I feel it like throughout my entire body. My temperament gets shorter. My fuse rather gets shorter. So I'm a big fan of that. Or I'm a big walker too. Like, if I need to clear my head in nature, especially on the beach, in the woods, anywhere outside. And unfortunately, I live in New England right now, so it's flipping cold, but I still go outside anyway. But those are kind of my two go-tos when it comes to mindfulness and like staying present and sane.
Yeah, I like that, because walking and things like that can be a mindful meditation where you're still moving, you're still able to do things, but you're creating this different type of meditation versus the, sitting.
Yeah, the Om. Yep.
In complete nothingness, right?
Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm.
And it serves different purposes, and I like that.
It does.
Thank you for sharing that. It's
You're
important for
welcome.
people to know that there's different types of meditations out there, that it's not just sitting there
Yeah.
for an hour or 5 in nothingness.
Right. And it doesn't have to be that long either. I think that's the thing that I was always like, I don't, you hear the I don't have the time excuse, right? But I even notice like a 3 to 5 minute meditation for me. I'm a big fan of like Insight Timer and things like that. Even those make such a huge impact in the trajectory of my day, which I would never, 2 years ago would have thought, but I can't go without it now.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm with you on that. So now for our final and fun question.
Yeah.
What is your irresistible call to action for our action takers today?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think, I have a wonderful kind of free guide on how to become a podcast guest, because that's another thing I get asked all the time lately because they're so big, right? So I would encourage people to kind of go and check that out, because it has these helpful points that aren't hard, because I think people overcomplicate it. I mean, that's my biggest piece of advice here, is keep it simple on a lot of levels. But this especially, keeps it simple for you and gives you a lot of great tips that'll help you figure out, how to get on the podcast and identify the ones that align with you, and things like that. So that is a little gift for everybody here.
Perfect. Now tell us what your website is real quick.
Yeah. So it's michelleamercier.com. So really straightforward.
Excellent. And for all of you listening, all of that is in the description. So don't forget to listen to the next episode of the Call to Action podcast, where conscious, awakened leaders listen and action takers get rewarded. And what we want to do is hear what you loved about this episode. Drop it in the comments. Make sure to like, follow, and check out Michelle's free call to action guide there for becoming a podcast guest. Maybe you'll end up on this podcast or hers.
That'd be fantastic, right?
That would be. So I'm Nicole Magic. Thank you so much, Michelle, for joining me today. And may all of you out there, wherever you are, day or night, have a most spectacular evening, day. Love you all. Goodbye, everyone, and thank you for listening. I hope you found today's episode insightful and invaluable to elevating your own business.